Debate night is back. Since the last time we were on air, we've had defections, resignations, reshuffles, protests, flags, leadership contests, and the sunniest summer in years. Now the heat is building in the countdown to next May's Holyrood elections. Tonight we're in Edinburgh, where people from right across Scotland's capital city have come here to share their views. Welcome to a new series of Debate Night. Debate Night is the only show in Scotland where you get to ask the big questions, answering them on our panel this evening. Jackie Baillie is Deputy Leader of Scottish Labour and the MSP for Dumbarton. Jackie was elected to the Scottish Parliament when it started, way back in 1999. Today she's also the party spokesperson for health and social care. Hassun Al-Zafar is the Director and CEO of Edinburgh Science. Born in Sheffield, he worked as a science teacher before becoming a theatre producer and director. He moved to Scotland last year and believes Edinburgh could lead the way in the artificial intelligence revolution. Also with us from the world of business, investment manager Anna MacDonald from a base here in Edinburgh. Anna looks after hundreds of millions in investments on behalf of clients around the world and is also a trustee of a think tank looking to promote increased economic prosperity and effective public services as well. From the Scottish Conservatives, Briggs is MSP for Lothian. Miles was elected to Holyrood almost 10 years ago and is now the party spokesperson for education. And finally, from the SNP, the MP for Angus and Perthshire Glens, Dave Doogan, a former Ministry of Defence aircraft engineer. Dave is now the SNP spokesperson for Defence and Economy. Please welcome them all to Debate Night. Great to be back, and welcome also to our studio audience here in Edinburgh. Thanks for joining us tonight. And you can join in the discussion from home, wherever you happen to be in Scotland tonight. BBCDN is the hashtag you need right now on social media. And don't forget, our Debate Night podcast is available for you to download straight after this show. So let's get started. We've got a lot to get through. A lot has happened since the start of the summer. Our first question tonight comes from Jack Chapman. Jack, good evening.
Good evening. My question for the panel is, are anti-immigrant demonstrations a fringe movement or a warning sign for mainstream politics?
Thank you, Jack. First chance to talk about this following a summer of protests, demonstrations, flags as well. Jack, what do you think?
It's hard to tell. I think it's quietly become mainstream, and these people who are demonstrating are getting alienated. But in reality, I think it's more than just them. It's a lot of the public.
Thank you, Jackie Baillie. Fringe movement or something else?
I think it is worrying, and I share your worries. I know in my local community, suddenly flags have appeared on lampposts, every single lamppost, and the community they appeared in, I never thought was remotely unwelcoming. But clearly we need a debate about immigration, about illegal immigration, which I take as very different to migration that is legal.
Why do you take those flags as being a measure of the community being unwelcoming? That's what you said. Because
when the council went to take them down, because flags on lampposts aren't legal, they were abused for doing so. And I think we need more of a dialogue to understand people's concerns, to get behind it. The flags are an expression of something much deeper. I think people are dissatisfied, they want things to change, and they're believing some of the rhetoric we're hearing from people like Nigel Farage and Reform that immigration is the cause of all their problems. If we stop for a minute and think about the value of migration to this country, the fact that we have doctors and nurses who come from abroad to work in Scotland. We have people who have married into our communities. They are our communities. They're part of our culture now. We have always been a welcoming country, and I hope we can continue to be that. What I also am very, very clear about is that illegal immigration isn't helping at all. And we need to get a grip of that. And the Labour government have said that what they will do is speed up the process by which asylum claims are dealt with, both negatively and positively. We will end the use of hotels because I don't think that's appropriate. And we will do so by the end of this Parliament, hopefully sooner than that. But we need to have a conversation about the value of migration to this country, to our economy, to our public services, and I don't hear that enough at the moment. And I think we all have a responsibility to challenge some of the things we're hearing much sooner than we have done.
Miles Briggs, we're now told the Diffley Partnership say it's one of the top three concerns for people in Scotland. That's something that's never happened before. What's going on?
Well, I think we've seen over the summer these demonstrations across the UK, and I don't think we should try to dismiss them. People are clearly not happy, and as an Edinburgh MSP, I, on a weekly basis, am having people coming to me with homelessness issues. Often these people will say to me, all we've been offered is a hotel, and more people are living in hotel rooms with their young children, and are then actually linking this to what they're seeing on television as well, with asylum hotels being used. So I agree with Jackie. I don't think we can dismiss this. I think we need to have that national debate. I actually think when you look at Edinburgh, we have very low numbers. Glasgow is a very different situation. It has historically been an asylum city and taken more people in, but certainly we need to make sure our councils, and given the homelessness crisis and emergency we've declared in Scotland, it is clear that this is impacting, and many citizens want to make sure that we have an outcome, and Scottish people are not being put down lists for housing, things like that. And I'm worried about what this will mean for the future, and certainly here in Edinburgh, we are in a homelessness crisis which we don't see any way of getting out of as a council anyway.
OK, I want to hear from the audience on this. Lady on the aisle in the glasses first. Yes, on you go.
I think that there's a really important distinction that needs to be made when we're talking about illegal immigration. I think that is a term that is incredibly inflammatory, and it is being used in ways that far surpass its actual meaning, and that sort of rhetoric is stoking racial tensions. I think we can clearly see that with this kind of focus on national identity becoming a very kind of ethno-nationalism rather than a more kind of civic nationalism. And I think that actually it is both perpetuated by the media and by politicians when they talk about illegal immigration without actually defining what they mean with those terms. And I think that we are running a risk of really losing sight of who it is that is quote unquote problematic and who the general public are considering problematic. And in picking apart those problems, we might actually identify community-based solutions.
Thank you. Dave Doogan, former Scottish First Minister Humza Yousaf said Scotland is becoming less tolerant when it comes to immigration. Is he right?
Well, I think we need to have a reset of what we see as immigration. I think we've heard both from the panel on this first question and from the audience is that this is not a simple issue. This is not a one-dimensional subject that we're talking about. And the government in Westminster will talk about nobody who comes here illegally seeking asylum will be allowed to stay here. Well, that's great, but there are no legal routes to come to the UK to seek asylum. And over and above that, we must separate. It's really important to separate asylum seekers from more broader migration generally. I'm the product of immigration. I'm quite proud of that. Many of us in the audience and even on the panel will be products of immigration. I don't know why there's this need now to put, or rather I do know why there is a need and a desire, a one-dimensional need and desire to pull up the drawbridge. And that's because, turbocharged by Brexit, there is a feeling of increasing gloom across society. There are people going out to work today and paying tax who have never known anything other than structural economic decline in the United Kingdom. And if you think that's just some abstract theory, it manifests itself in an inability to pay your energy bills in Scotland, an inability to get a house. And if you do, you're struggling to pay your rent or your mortgage, just like your parents did when you were a kid. And against that backdrop, much of it caused by Brexit, caused by Nigel Farage, he comes along and tells us, I've got a solution for that as well. It's these asylum seekers and immigrants that are causing your problems. It is not. This is one of the most economically unequal societies in the developed world, if not the most. The haves have plenty and the have-nots have next to nothing, and people have had enough. And somebody like Farage comes along and produces an enormously simplistic excuse for a really complex answer. And I don't blame people for buying into that simple narrative because it's attractive, but it's a false narrative.
But is it a fringe movement? Isn't that really suggesting people are gullible?
No, it's not suggesting they're gullible at all. It's, you know, if you listen to Nigel Farage in a superficial way, what he says has appeared to make sense. And he's very cynical at that as well, because the migration and asylum seeking issue in the United Kingdom is extremely complex. But here's a simple element to it. In 2006, the then Labour Minister, John Reid, walked into the Home Office in London and said, this place isn't fit for purpose. John Reid was right in 2006. And he'd be right now. The Home Office is not fit for purpose. When we were still in the EU and subject to the Dublin regulation, there were 299 boat crossings from the continent into the UK. This year alone, it's 30,000 and growing. That's what happens when you turn your back on your neighbours. That's what happens when you refuse to cooperate with your nearest neighbours. And Farage is the architect of that. So for him to say he's got the solution is taking people for fools. But I don't take...
You can't say this is a fringe issue.
I didn't say it was a fringe issue.
Reform are polling at 23%. So I think that saying that 23% of Scots are saying that Farage is coming up with the solutions about immigration. I don't think that's what he's saying. I think the real problem is that, as you've captured, economic growth is not happening for people. But the Labour Party is powering on with policies. They say priorities are growing the economy. Yet we have the highest electricity costs in the developed world. We are upping labour force employment regulation. We're making things more difficult to grow. So it's not a priority. And it's very hard to work out what the SNP's priorities are. As far as I can tell, they've got about 4 of them. So we're not actually addressing the problems. So I understand why people are feeling unhappy about things and they want change. That's why they're going to reform. I don't think they're necessarily racist. I don't think they're necessarily even anti-immigration. They're not fools, and we don't want a Trumpist-style America, but I can understand why they're going for him.
Yeah, Ross Foyer from the STUC, who's frequently been on this programme, said people are raging but not racist. Hassun Al-Zafar, what do you think? Are these demonstrations a fringe movement, or are they something much bigger?
Look, there's one thing that we need to kind of really establish, and if you look at the facts, migration overall benefits this nation, and that's a clear fact. And if we look at the other facts, right, asylum seekers in Scotland make up about less than 1% of the entire population. And so for anyone to come along and say the problems that we have in society, whether that's the energy crisis or the cost of living, are caused by migrants or asylum seekers in this instance, it's just not true. So I think, you know, the panelists have talked about making a debate, but you have to have the parameters of that debate based on fact. If you set the parameters of that debate somewhere which is not factual, you've already set yourself up for failure. Now, there's a future-looking aspect to this and a backward-looking aspect. I think I'm going to start with the backward aspect of this. We've got a fundamental rethink to our national story to look at here. Forgive me for a moment to kind of go back to this. In school, you learn about the Battle of Somme. And in that battle, over 500,000 Allied soldiers lost their lives going over the trenches. If you go to the Somme today in the area of France, you will find a cemetery called the La Chapelle Cemetery. In that cemetery, there's about 570 graves. If you were looking at the markings of the names on those graves, you will find Scottish names like Campbell and MacDonald. You will also find the names Patel, Singh, Ahmed, and Mohammed. Now, those men fought in the trenches for a multicultural society, an interfaith society, a society that respected the liberty and freedom of others. The least that we can do is fight for that society to continue to exist today. And so that means that we don't look at fringe movements and say they're racist. We look at the fundamental causes of why people are thinking that way and find real political solutions, in my opinion, to the very real issues like the cost of living crisis, like the energy bills. And we make sure the debate is rooted in fact And the fact is, migrants make this country great. Unless you're going to declare yourself to be the evolutionary descendant of the first fish that came onto this island, I've got some news to you. You are an immigrant.
Okay. Let's hear from the audience. Man on the aisle first, at the very back. On you go.
So I want to circle back a bit. I heard you talking, using the term the solution to immigration. I don't think that that's necessarily a term that should be being used. I think immigration is an amazing thing. I completely agree with yourself. Talk about that. I think immigration can help to reintroduce more people to especially the Highlands and Islands, where all the way back when, at the end of the Second World War, where people were being encouraged to move away to Canada and the US with incentives of money, free land, free housing. I think incentives can be made for immigrants that are coming in not to stay in Edinburgh, Glasgow, places that are overpopulated, to move to the Highlands and Islands, bring industry, bring people back to the places where they've gone missing over the last 50 to 100 years.
But what about illegal immigration? Is that where there needs to be a solution?
I mean, yes, I agree. The solution is that there's not a way for these people to get here. There needs to be something planned out, built out, so that people can come, people can go to these sparsely populated areas and bring money back into the economy.
OK, thank you. Lady right on the end there. Yes, on you go. Yeah. You.
Hi, I'm an EU citizen, actually, and what's happening at the moment is really, really quite scary. But I also wanted to mention that I think the media is also quite complicit, because we have 4 UK reform MPs right now, but they get about 25% of the coverage, and I think that's contributing a lot to the current feeling of hatred and discontent.
OK. I'm not sure it's as much as 25%. It might seem like that sometimes. A man with the beard down the front here.
I think just even saying asylum seekers, this is people seeking safety, and once they arrive here, we are accommodating people and helping them, and just even using the term asylum seeker is othering people, and I think we just need to get back to a place of speaking about people as humans.
So someone watching this who's taken part in the demonstrations outside migrant hotels, what would you say to them?
I think that, as it's been covered by panellists as well, is that there are real problems in our society, and there's a lot of wealth in the UK, but a lot of poverty. And as Miles said, he has constituents talking about homelessness, and it's not us and them, it's everyone, and we have the resources to help everyone. Thank you.
Lady in the middle, here. Yes.
Hi there. I heard you're talking about Nigel Farage. Like him or loathe him, he is actually listening to the British people. The majority of people are not happy with the illegal immigrants. This country's always welcomed immigration into its arena. I welcome it. People come in, they work, they pay their taxes, and they integrate into our society. No one has an issue with that in this country. But the amount of illegal immigrants coming in on boats is astronomical. And the Labour Party have done little to nothing about it until such times as people took to the streets, started raising their flags, that they are now saying, oh, this is now a problem. It's always been a problem. And until people rise up and say, enough is enough, nothing gets done.
Jackie Baillie, how many, is it 3 people have now gone back to France under the one in, one out system, which is the flagship policy?
I've no idea how many have gone back, but that deal was negotiated with France to have that one in, one out policy. There is a commitment to ending the use of hotels for asylum seekers. I think that's right, that we should do that. There should be more fitting accommodation, but we should also be alive to, the fact that Miles is right. We have a housing emergency in Scotland, and people are not getting homes, decent homes to live in. But it is just simply wrong to say that the UK Labour government is doing nothing. They are actually trying to do a lot. 35,000 people have had their claims processed. There was a huge backlog. The numbers were continuing to rise. The previous Conservative government really did nothing about it. They were the ones that opened the hotels. They were the ones that created this backlog. We're trying to fix it now.
Okay.
Where would they stay?
Well, what's already been talked about is there are military facilities where there's the opportunity to put in place housing that is there for asylum seekers, taking them away from hotels, taking them away from mainstream accommodation. But the key thing is to get their applications processed. And that's what a UK Labour government is doing. So that if there is a legitimate asylum claim, then they can stay in the country and be welcomed to the country, just as you yourself said. But if it's not, then we need to repatriate people because they're not here on the basis of asylum.
OK, it's our first week back. I know we will discuss this again. Tonight we're in Edinburgh. Next week we're going to be in Dundee. If you'd like to come along and be part of the audience for that show, go to the website. Week after that, it is Stirling, bbc.co.uk/debate night. Let's go to our second question of the night, which comes from Annette Jameson. Annette, good evening.
Hello. How confident are you that our young people here in Scotland are best equipped to benefit from the revolution underway in AI?
Crikey. A revolution is underway, isn't it? Best productivity opportunities since industrialisation, curing disease, solving climate change, or opening the door to mass unemployment and ignorance as well. Hassun, Al-Zafar, how are we fixed here in Scotland? How are our children fixed in terms of the opportunity?
Well, here in Edinburgh, you have a fantastic science festival. That helps. No, look,
that's the plug. Next.
we are on the cusp, or we are already probably in a huge transformative technology which is going to be built into every part of our lives, whether we like it or not, and perhaps whether we know it or not. I think that we could take lessons on how the internet rolled out and how quickly that happened. Well, this is happening faster. I think we need to prepare the young generation now for the digital literacy skills, or I say AI literacy skills, that they're going to need going forward. There is a real risk, and already AI leaders are talking about this, that people are using AI to think rather than to help them do the task. And I think that is going to be an important skill set of how do you critically use AI as a tool within your day-to-day work.
Do you think our politicians might be doing that?
Ooh, well, you know,
Should they be doing that?
I am not going to say much about the politicians here or anywhere. None of it. Look, I think that it's a skill set that everyone needs to learn, and I think there is perhaps a laziness what's happening with the use of certain large language models where people are just bonging in their emails and hoping that they get a good response back. That's probably a superficial way to use AI, and that's probably the first kind of use that people are having right now. But agentic AI will mean that people will have their virtual assistants. You've got a world where people will have virtual use that the NHS perhaps would use to see how your healthcare should be transformed. The other thing to announce on this is that we're going to see a huge investment, and we're already seeing it, in places like data centers, in places like quantum technologies. And that means there's going to be another skill set that's going to be required in our society, a skill set of perhaps the traditional plumbers, mechanics, engineers that we perhaps didn't really pay attention to for a while. We're going to need a lot of those. And we're seeing that AI leaders are actually coming out and saying, if you want to do like a lot of studying in AI right now, you're probably behind the curve. But what we do need is a lot of skills which are going to enable us to build the infrastructure which allows for these technologies to exist.
So are we preparing our young people for that?
Well, this is where we need to look at, curriculums usually take a long time to change, and whether we need to be looking at informal science learning spaces where we can actually go in and actually teach children about AI within the context of what's happening right now. There is also another problem, that this technology is rapidly going fast, so fast that if you created an educational content piece today, it's probably outdated by next week. So, and also another problem with this is probably the kids are probably more queued up with what's happening in AI and using AI more than the people who are trying to create the educational content. We need a critical thinking skill set there. How you use digital technologies ethically needs to be there. And I think there does need to be a government strategy going forward of what is the country's vision with this technology, and how does it marry up with the other forms of economic development or social development that we want to see? Because there is a fear too that we are just using AI as a bandword to kind of solve all these problems. It's going to solve the NHS waiting list. It's going to solve the employability stuff. It's not a magical wand to solve all our problems. It's a tool which is here. It may be transformative. It may not be. I think it will be. It certainly indicates that it will be. But there is also a thing that it could fall flat on its face.
A good chance from all of you to hear how you're using it at this kind of early stage. Gentleman in the glasses.
I'm a young person, I'm 17, I'm still making my way through secondary education, and yeah, AI can be fun. I mean, it's good to generate funny pictures or to talk to anime characters, but I think I know a lot of people who are attempting to be artists or to be writers, and these people are definitely afraid of AI because they feel like their hard work, their years of building their skills of being able to write or being able to draw are just going down the drain. Like their work never really mattered because you can just type, make me a funny story or draw me a picture, and the AI will do it in seconds, and it doesn't cost anything. So that's one of my big concerns about AI personally.
Thank you. Just down here, I'll come to you in a second. Hassun, yeah.
Yeah, I've been involved in IT since 1982. So at that time, the change was actually technological in terms of the chips and the equipment that was getting used, and the storage that was getting used. That was doubling and then doubling again and then doubling again as we went through that period. We've now got to the stage where it's actually software, which was lagging behind at that point, is now doubling and doubling and doubling. And that is where things are really going to change when you think about where we are with the supercomputers that we've got these days, and what they're actually being used for. If you actually apply that to the software that we're talking about, things are going to change markedly. And society is going to have to change markedly to accept that and live with it.
So you've been doing this for a long time. Are you excited or are you worried about this?
I am ambivalent to it, to be honest. The reason I'm ambivalent is because AI is only dependent upon what you feed it to begin with. It'll actually change when it starts to feed itself, and that's when the big change will be. And I'm not talking about, you know, being taken over by supercomputers or robotics or anything like that. It will make a very vast difference to all parts of our life. Vast. And we're just going to have to actually educate people that there are other things they can be doing with their time to help society and to make money for themselves.
Thank you. Dave Doogan, at the moment, there are no rules about how AI should be used in schools. Shouldn't there be?
I suppose, you know, the avoidance of harm is a priority, whether that's generated by AI or any other form of social or traditional media. So, yeah, I think that's a given. But to the original question, which I think was about employment, there's clearly opportunities for Scotland. We've got a huge excess of energy that we don't use and we export south of the border. It'd be far better return on that investment if we could get those data centres here and use that energy that we have in excess to power those data centres, which produce a lot of heat, which could then be used for district heat and power to heat homes in the local vicinity as well. As has already been touched on, there's the building and manufacture and maintenance of that. So there's all employment opportunities that we would have here in Scotland. I'm very concerned about the AI scraping that was touched on, whereby intellectual property is an AI free-for-all. Why would you continue as an artist if your intellectual property can get ripped off at will by some large language model in Nevada without anybody there to protect you? And the Department for Culture, Media and Sport in the United Kingdom government's been found fairly significantly wanting in those protections for artists domiciled here. So I think, you know, I've been interviewing people recently. I've got an awful lot of applications for a couple of jobs, and some of those applications are AI, and I can spot it a mile away. I've also been looking for a new car. I've been reading some car adverts. AI, I can spot it a mile away.
Do you use it? Do you use it in work?
What I think is going to change is in a year or two, or even less, you won't be able to spot it at all, be far too clever.
Yeah, so do you write a speech with it? Would you?
I don't use it, Stephen, at all. I would never, well, I wouldn't say never, I have never considered using it to write a speech. I think if you can't articulate your ambitions for your constituency and for your nation from your own head, then you're probably looking for a different line of work than the one I'm in.
Anna, opportunity. Opportunity or threat? How do you see it?
I just want to clear up something. We can't actually use intermittent power for data centres at the moment. Wind and solar are both intermittent power sources. And also we have an underinvested grid, so we can't build data centres and we don't have the network ability to take the output from those data centres and bring them in. So that needs a huge amount of investment and is very expensive, and is one of the reasons why the massive companies like NVIDIA and Microsoft and the hyperscalers are spending so much developing nuclear power and developing and using, actually, I mean, China is developing very quickly, but they are building a coal-fired power station every week. So intermittent power does not work for AI yet. We need to have huge, vast amounts of energy storage to make that work. How to teach AI in schools? What's important is that, as Hassun said, you need critical thinking skills to develop by all children. My daughter's studying for the International Baccalaureate. They are taking laptops and computers out of the classroom. They're not putting them in. She's doing everything by hand. She's having to look up existing sources. She's having to actually, their exams, they don't have any kind of screens anywhere near them. So that is really important, because OpenAI, and there's so much cross-holding of these companies at the moment. We really are handing over our data and our thinking skills to a group of pretty select, unbelievably powerful and wealthy individuals. And I, for one, want to be able to have children who can question what they read and don't just throw things into something and wait to see what it gets back.
Let's find out how the audience are maybe using it now. Lady with the glasses, right on the end here. Yeah.
As a high school student, I've seen a rapid increase around my classmates saying, I will just ask ChatGPT. There is a massive decline in critical thinking there, but what worries me the most about this excessive use of AI is the environmental impact. We've already seen mass drought in places like California, where Bill Gates has all of his data centers. What if there's a risk of that in the UK, that it shouldn't be such a resource used in excess? It should be something used in moderation for things that are scientific, things that are important, not for just your common person to use.
Thank you. Miles Briggs, Conservative education spokesman in Scotland. Are you concerned about the impact it's having on critical thinking with young people?
So it's interesting, I had a conversation with Edinburgh University around this, and some of the concerns around plagiarism, using ChatGPT, like you mentioned, to write essays. And part of what they were saying is they've turned the tables to actually get pupils to critique different bits of AI written. And I think, Dave, you said you do this when you've seen these applications. So I think we need to maybe box a bit more clever in terms of how students will use this. But the question over whether or not young people are ready for this revolution, I'm not quite sure we are in Scotland. We have a record low number of computing teachers, for example. The STEM recruitment in our schools is at a real crisis at this moment. So I think we need to look towards actually where Scotland really benefited hugely with the game industry. Here in the capital, we've got some big companies. I'm not sure we've really got a strategy around how AI
because it's already happening. We've heard that. It's already out there. It's already being used now, today.
But where we're going to make sure our society benefits, most of the conversations we've had in Parliament over this is the potential for the NHS, for example, to read scans, for AI to do that. That can't just be put to that alone. I think we'll always need to make sure, and clinicians are telling us this, that we have human eyes on these scans. We're not just going to put this out to technology and say that's that. We'll fill shortages in our NHS using computers. I don't think people would accept that alone. So this can be a really positive add-on, but we shouldn't put all our eggs in this basket.
Is it already compromising our thinking, our ability to critically think?
Look, that's an answer perhaps we wouldn't know that's a question we don't know the answer for right now. And what I would say is, as with all new technologies that we've seen historically, there are always unintended consequences that we don't see coming. Sure. We saw that with the petroleum car, we saw that with the internet, we'll probably see that with AI now. It's advanced so far fast without us having the regulations and the needs of actually understanding and stopping and pausing and thinking, how are we using this in our lives? For the young person that uses ChatGPT every day, do they really think my data is being used as a product for a large corporation sitting in America. I don't think that thinking is happening, and whoever's using those products. I would also say there's already a huge divide in the digital literacy of this product. For those who are already using it, they are probably going to be far more productive and actually probably doing far more advancements in society, whether it's technology companies or whether it's even individuals. And there's a real danger too, because we are entering a space where there will be industry leaders within the next 2-3 years, if I could to predict this at a random ad hoc level, that will say, if your job is basically taking data from one place to another place, there's probably an AI machine that's going to be able to do that for me, so I don't need you anymore. So what's the regulations to protect jobs during this transition period? Now, I would say we've talked about an AI strategy and the government forming a strategy, but with all new technologies, the people who need to really inform that technology and how it goes about in their life are you, the public. And you have to be at the forefront of thinking, how is AI transforming my life? How should it be transforming my life? And where should this really radical technology be improving my life and my community? That voice can only be made if the public have a real big say and informing government on how these corporations, which are going to coming in large scale, making a lot of money from us using their products, how are they giving back to society, and how are we holding them accountable?
Let's give the public to say. Man in the middle here, yes. On you go.
Hi. So I work in the voluntary sector, particularly with marketing, and we have been looking at how AI could improve local communities. Of course, there are concerns about artistic integrity, critical thinking, advertising for different products, and yeah, just keeping people in jobs and making sure employment stays within reasonable boundaries. The problem is, where is the line drawn in terms of, is this ethical? Can we use this and not put others at risk around us?
Thank you. Man on the end down here as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of mental health is coming down the road. People that do voiceovers, gone. Nobody does it, gone, taken. There's a friend at the back here, artists. It's all coming down the road, mental health. I know somebody that's trying to do something about it if you're interested. It's World Homeless Day on the 8th of October, and the Scottish comedy clubs are getting comedians in, and they've got all the facility, everything set up already, courses for homeless people.
This is like Plug Central here tonight,
sorry,
isn't it?
Sorry, Stephen.
No. But the point you're making is that we are storing up issues with this that we're not addressing yet. Jackie Baillie.
So I think it's about both. It's about making sure you have the critical thinking, the people to do the analysis, the people who understand AI and how you can use it. But I also regard AI as an opportunity. What I absolutely agree about is we need a debate about what that opportunity looks like. I don't think our young people are equipped with the skills that they need to be equipped with to get the best use out of it. And that's something about having the curriculum much more focused on STEM subjects, on AI, on what the future looks like. Now, I am old enough to remember the first mobile phone I had. It was a brick, okay? And look at how that technology has expanded, enabled us to do so much more that we would never have dreamed of. So it's how you harness the opportunity of AI to make it work for us. And I want to just double down on the example that Miles gave, because we have a shortage of radiographers. The waiting times to get your scans read are really, really enormous. Normally, it's 2 sets of eyes you would have on each scan. You could replace 1 set of eyes with AI, who are just very good at picking out what those scans say and what the problems are. But you have another set of human eyes on it to make sure it's right. That would speed up diagnosis. It would speed up scan results in such an incredible way. That's the kind of positive thing you can harness AI for. And can I just make this point? The government have secured a deal with the US for £150 billion of tech. AI will be part of that. We need to have that conversation about how we use it best so that we all thrive as a consequence.
Your views on all of that, the hashtag is BBCDN on social media. Feel free to use AI to help write the posts, if you'd like. Let's go on to our next question of the night, which comes from Isabel Roths. Isabel, evening.
Hi, my question is, what is your plan to build more affordable housing in Scotland?
Thank you, Isabel. MSPs today voted on a new housing bill, and earlier this month the Scottish Government launched a housing emergency action plan pledging to build more homes more quickly. Dave Doogan, all the targets on this down the years have been missed in Scotland in terms of building new homes. What's going to be different this time around?
Well, they haven't just been missed in Scotland, Stephen. Of course, they've been missed elsewhere in the United Kingdom as well. When the Scottish Government, the SNP Scottish Government came in 2007, we brought with us an ambitious plan for affordable housing. We're well on the road to building 110,000 council houses in Scotland. We've invested substantially in mid-market rent, shared equity and affordable homes for purchase and help to buy. So, the idea that the Scottish Government isn't taking this seriously is not really very valid. That doesn't take away from the acute, severe problems that people face in accessing housing. Much of that is manifest here in Edinburgh, where the problem is, worse than anywhere else in Scotland and worse than a lot of places in the United Kingdom, I believe. So, but the issue about affordability, there's two sides to that equation. There's the price of the accommodation and the disposable income which you have to spend on your accommodation, and that which you have to spend once you have accommodation. So, in terms of the supply side, usually, or in fact invariably, when you get to a problem of supply of housing, that is about building enough houses. Why are we not building enough houses? Well, the Scottish Government's capital grant has been continually cut by Westminster. That's a problem, but it's not the only problem. The nature of land ownership in Scotland is a severe problem. There's lots of housing market areas in every single Scottish local authority where there's money sitting there to build houses, but no land upon which to build them. And that's a function of land ownership in Scotland. And then there's the acquisition of portfolios of properties as a speculative endeavour, whether you're a landlord or not. And that's not particularly helpful in terms of what it does to the price of property. It's not actually very helpful for the wider economy either, because if you invest in property, you're not actually making anything. You're not creating anything. You're just relying on a rising market. It's a legitimate thing to do, but it's not especially helpful. So it's about, the Scottish Government's got its housing bill going through Parliament now. I think it's at stage 3, the Scottish Parliament. And so we'll see what that brings in terms of protecting people. And so, but the Scottish Government will continue in its ambition to deliver more and more affordable housing, that which we've been doing now for 18 years.
Okay, we're in a housing emergency. We've been there for over a year. Do you see the flashing blue lights, Jackie Baillie, of an emergency?
Absolutely. It is really frustrating. I get constituents coming in all the time. They're either homeless, they are in overcrowded conditions, they can't get properties to bring up their families in. As we speak, 34,000 people last year were homeless. Rough sleeping is rising. 10,000 children are in temporary accommodation, the worst kind of accommodation for them. We are simply not building enough houses. And I have to say, I'm not going to say that the SNP government have done a good job, because they cut the housing budget 2 years in a row. The fact that they've just about restored it, we should be thankful for, I suppose. But the reality is they're not building. Planning needs to be reformed. They're not doing anything with that. They declared a housing emergency and then did nothing about it. So enough. We have the land, we have the ability to do this. We have housing developers wanting to build affordable housing, as are housing associations and councils, but there isn't the political will in the SNP government.
I completely agree with that. I think it's not being made a priority. I've been speaking to people in preparation for this about the priorities, and there's a very complicated framework about how houses should be built. Loads of different, very complicated policies in place, and I pulled up the framework today and I counted different words, and biodiversity was mentioned 99 times, net zero was mentioned 66 times, and affordable 33 times, economic growth 6 times. That is not a priority to build houses. This is allowing people to stop houses being built in their areas because they can say, I have biodiversity issues. I'm concerned about that. It's not driving net zero. I'm concerned about that. There's no way we're going to build 110,000 affordable houses by 2032, which is the plan. The planning system is completely stuck. It's broken.
Is there an argument, Dave Doogan, that in the midst of an emergency, which the Scottish Government did declare, the SNP did declare this, that things should be stopped, rules and regulations that have been in place should be pushed aside to get houses built?
No, not pushed aside, but streamlined. There's an argument that says, you know, whether it's the regime about local development plans or whether it's, you know, on the horizon that they occupy within local authorities and looking at that and streamlining that, I don't think there's a challenge. I don't think there's a problem with that. What I do take issue with is people criticising the SNP and their SNP Scottish Government and their progress in this priority, which I'll be the first to say is not delivering what it needs to do for everybody that needs affordable accommodation. That's just a demonstrable fact, and it's a problem, and I wish it wasn't. However, there is nowhere in the United Kingdom that any of my panellists can point to it and say the Scottish Government should be doing that. There is nowhere exceeding what the Scottish Government is doing, and there's a reason for that. It's because the UK is up to its eyeballs in debt. The money's not there.
Hang on a second. Miles Briggs thinks Manchester's the place we can learn from. Why Manchester?
All the affordable housing development which we should have had in Scotland has gone to Manchester, and I say that because the rent controls policy which was brought in has seen all mid-market rent development here in the capital disappear, and we've got development sites not far from where we are tonight which are not being developed as they were going to be for mid-market rent, which many professionals and people seeking homes in the capital need. That development's all gone down to Manchester. They very much wanted the mayor down there open arms to get that investment. So these policy decisions which the SNP have taken over 18 years, you have to own, Dave, because I think we have seen, especially the Greens coming into office, poor decision-making taken, which has completely ruined the housing market in Scotland.
Do you accept that, Dave Doogan?
Part of the nature of coalition administration is you don't get everything your own way, and I'm glad that Miles highlighted the source of some of this issue. We may well be, but the point is about rent controls. Is that the Scottish Government are addressing that in the housing bill with an inflation plus 1%. Which seems, you know, pretty reasonable in terms of allowing that investment to get, and allowing investors to have confidence that they'll get a return on that investment. So that is what the Scottish Government are trying to bring in to precisely address the issue.
The thing is, this isn't just about houses, is it? These are homes. These are where we make our lives and where we build communities. So let's hear some solutions from the audience. Man in the audience here.
Yeah, I know you can't turn the clock back, but the right to buy scheme, for instance, decimated social housing in Scotland, you know, and these houses have never been replaced. They've never been replaced. You know, flats or houses, given the expanding population and what have you. So the demand's there, but they're just not being built social housing. You know?
That's
I know it's a mixture, but it's still unaffordable for a lot of people on basics.
Thank you. Man in the blue shirt in the middle here. Yes.
So Jackie Baillie says that the Scottish Government are not building enough homes, but their block grant continues to be cut. What would Scottish Labour do different?
So we've already said that part of the agenda at a UK level is to build 1.5 million homes, okay? From that comes a portion of the budget that can be used in Scotland. So they can use money that's given to them by the UK government to build more homes. But the thing that I care about is sustaining people in their existing accommodation. People who become homeless actually are falling out of tenancies because they're not getting the support to remain where they are. So we need to move beyond simply bricks and mortar, important though that is, and wrap support round about people so that they can sustain tenancies. We've done that before. We set up a homelessness task force. We brought forward world-beating legislation, and we funded this in local authorities so that people didn't need to sleep rough, so that people could have a roof over their heads, and we provided them with housing support. That has been missing for the last 18 years from the SNP government. And that's what depresses me, because we can solve this. We should be able to solve this. And actually having a roof over your head is a fundamental right that I think everybody in this country deserves.
Labour-run Wales that you've been in for quite a while, in the leader, that's no better. you know, the homes that you're not building homes there either.
I'm elected to represent people here in Scotland. Right? I used to be a housing minister. We spent a lot of time making sure that we built homes through housing associations, principally dealing with homelessness, dealing with rough sleeping. There's a record there for you to see. And the thing that depresses me is we can do it, but we're not doing it just now.
OK, hang on a second, Dave. Man on the end of the road there, yes.
Personally, part of the problem we're not addressing, like, for example, you're having a go at the SNP and the Greens, but what you're also failing to mention is loads of your colleagues, especially in Westminster, as well as Jackie's, are all landlords. I pay my bills every month, I pay my council tax, my energy, prices are rising every month, and I'm struggling. But the fact of the matter is that loads of your colleagues are landlords and are also not paying their fair share of tax in some cases. So why should I listen to you all address these issues when you're part of the problem?
OK. And lady in the green, yes.
Question to the panel. We have a housing crisis in Edinburgh. We are throwing up, through private landlords, student accommodation. Why are we allowing that? Where's the infrastructure? Where's the GP practices? Where's the transport? But most of all, we have more student accommodation than we have students. We need proper accommodation for families. What's your solution and when you're going to do it?
OK, Hassun, give me your view on that first. As somebody who's moved to the city and had to find a home here, what have you seen? What have been your experiences?
I mean, I think there's a great sense of frustration amongst young people right now with this particular problem. The idea, the very social fabric of society, you work hard, you get a job, you pay your bills, you save up, you get on a housing ladder. That's been broken. So many young people feel that just getting a house seems like a far-fetched dream, so impossible. How disempowering that is for an entire generation, I think we can't underestimate that. And, you know, we've had a lot of debate on the panel, and respectfully, I think most young people will be saying, we'll believe it when we see it. When those social housings are built and we can buy them with with the wages that we have, that's when we know there'll be a solution, actually. We've had enough talk. Just get on with it. That's what I would say.
Families need homes now. They don't need it in the future. They need it now. They're in homeless accommodation now. They need to be somewhere. They need a whole roof over their heads.
It's a really valid point. And the politicians need to solve that problem immediately.
Dave Doogan, that's the passion that lies behind this. Is the commitment there to change things? I mean, you've set another target for house building in Scotland. What makes you think it will be different this time in terms of delivery?
Well, so I listened very carefully to the analysis that was in the question about the situation that's particular to Edinburgh. And every local authority has to have a housing supply plan and address that housing supply plan. So if there's problems with the Edinburgh City Council's application of planning consents for student accommodation versus settled accommodation, then that's something that Edinburgh City Council will have to reconcile. And it sounds like they'll have to do it pretty quick. But in terms of the ambition more generally, Stephen, across the nation, it's clearly going to be a key issue in the upcoming Scottish Parliament election. Every political party will have to set out their stall about their ambitions for this priority going forward. The
Campaigners say it should be the #1 issue in this election, the housing emergency.
Well, other people would say that the cost of living crisis or the cost of energy should be the #1 issue, or other people say it's the environment, other people say it's education or health that should be the priority. The job of politicians, and especially those politicians that find themselves in government, is to reconcile those competing ambitions in a way that is as just as possible within the funding envelope that we currently have in Scotland. Of course, Scotland's not in charge of our funding envelope. We get that which we are given. And just to correct Jackie very gently, Scotland isn't given money by the Westminster government. We are given our money back by the Westminster government.
Jackie Baillie?
The last time I looked, the Scottish Government was responsible for setting tax rates in Scotland and generating their own revenue from a number of income tax, land and building transaction tax, there's an aggregates tax, there are other things as well. So I think you're wrong to simply say it all comes from Westminster. We generate a lot of it in Scotland, and that's the government's decision to charge you at a higher tax band rate.
It's not like Westminster where it's oppositional. We're supposed to have a round table government in this country.
I'm not sure.
So why is everybody always sniping at each other and pointing fingers? That is a real letdown for the Scottish public.
Here's the frustration, right? as an opposition politician, I will go to ministers and I'll say, look, what about this idea? Can we try this? And they simply don't listen. And I genuinely say to you that if there was more collaboration, we maybe wouldn't have some of the problems we're experiencing.
Can you see a way forward in terms of consensus on housing? I mean, we're in a housing emergency. Do we need to get beyond the politics of this to find solutions to it?
So when the Scottish Government, and to be honest, they were forced by opposition parties to declare a housing emergency. It wasn't something they wanted to do. It was another, like drug deaths, another emergency on their watch. And I hoped, because I was our housing spokesperson at that point, that we would collectively look at solutions. Housing associations have been raised. There are housing associations who want to build new stock, who don't have the financial whereabouts to do that. Now, let's do something creative about that. Their borrowing powers, an opportunity. We haven't done that. And the sort of homes we need, and I can't remember who pointed upon that fact, mixed communities as well, we haven't done. And I think there's been a missed opportunity. Like with many things the government do, they move on to the next crisis, and we haven't actually had that opportunity to look at the long-term needs of our communities. And here in Edinburgh, it is beyond a crisis. You know, I had a meeting this week where we are not meeting our statutory housing for homeless people any longer. People are being told there is nothing for them, not even a hotel. So there is a real crisis here, which, as the lowest funded council in Scotland, we will find really difficult to resolve unless the Scottish Government do something.
I want to wrap this up with the audience. Young man in the middle there first, yes.
Yeah, just to link it back to the first question, actually. You know, we have dangerous politicians like Nigel Farage, who, when the question's put to him about planning for housing, you know, he doesn't go on about planning reform and details in terms of the economics like you guys were doing. He simply goes, well, we'll just remove people from the country. Some of the homes are there right now, and that is appealing to, especially people my age, not particularly me, but other people my age. And, you know, 9 years ago, there was a referendum, and he told us that we would take back control if we voted to leave, and we did. And now, according to him, the problem's worse than ever. So I think that hypocrisy of people like him and him himself cannot be overstated.
Okay, and let's just finish. The lady in front of you. Yes, and you go.
Yeah, I feel almost like my question wasn't actually answered with anyone giving an actual plan, just saying what things have been done and then blaming other people for it not being done. And I kind of just want to see if anyone actually has like plans, like not just capping rent, but building the workforce to build the houses, creating spaces for our lowest income community members to actually have a place to work and a place to live, because a society is only as good as its worst off citizen.
Okay. You don't fancy being in charge of housing, do you? Possibly. Okay. We'll talk about that after the show. There is an election coming up. That's it for tonight from us in Debate Night. Great to be back with you. We're going to be in Dundee next week and in Stirling the week after that. Have a look at our website if you want to come along and join us in the audience, as these people have. If you missed any of tonight's show, we're on again a little bit later, 10:40, BBC One Scotland, or watch any time that suits you on the BBC iPlayer. Thank you very much indeed to our panel here tonight and a brilliant audience here in Edinburgh. And to you at home, wherever you are in Scotland watching, we'll see you next week. In the meantime, stay safe, stay well. From all of us in Debate Night, good night.